The best way to learn a language? Immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards for you this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. For instance, I've been using Babbel's convenient courses to help me learn basic conversational skills in German while I'm getting ready for a little trip I'm planning. It's not a language I'd ever studied before, but I find the lessons really easy and kind of like hand-holding me through learning a completely new language to me. And it's reassuring to know that with the help of Babbel, I'll be able to greet people, order food, and ask for directions without having to consult language apps while I'm in Deutschland. I'm still learning. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold. Plus, all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/vulgar. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/vulgar, spelled BABBEL.com/vulgar. Rules and restrictions may apply.
As someone who enjoys trying out different makeup looks but doesn't wear a ton on a daily basis, I like to focus on making sure I have high quality staples. And regardless of your makeup routine, you've probably seen Thrive Causemetics Viral Tubing Mascara. I've certainly seen it everywhere. It's in that turquoise tube and it's become my go-to for mascara because it doesn't clump or smudge and it comes off really easily with just water. So that mascara, along with all of Thrive Causemetics beauty products, are certified 100% vegan and cruelty-free. Their bestsellers have thousands of 5-star reviews, and it's easy to see why. Their products are great. I love a multi-purpose makeup product, and their brilliant eye brightener is perfect to use as eyeliner, eyeshadow, even highlighter. I'd recommend using shade Stella for that. They all have a shimmer, and Stella is this really pretty champagne color that looks great on a variety of skin tones. Something I also didn't know from all the mascara videos I saw is that for every product sold, Thrive Causemetics donates either that same product, another product that's needed more, or a monetary donation towards 8 major causes, including those impacted by cancer, domestic abuse, and veteran and education organizations. So refresh your everyday look with Thrive Causemetics. It's beauty that gives back. Right now, you can get an exclusive 20% off your first order at thrivecausemetics.com/thrive. That's Thrive Causemetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/thrive for 20% off your first order.
Hello, and welcome to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. My name is Anne Foster, and first of all, this is season 7 of this podcast that has been going on now for almost 5 years. And this is also part 3 within that part 3 of the Peg Plunkett 3-part saga. This is the climactic finale of the Peg Plunkett saga. So in parts 1 and 2, we learned about this young woman and how she fled from her horrible brother Christopher to thrive in kind of casual sex work. And then it turned into literal, actual professional sex work. She opened her brothel and she just kept thriving despite being in the midst of this situationship with a really toxic, horrible man called Whimsically, although he sucked, Buck Lawless. Then she ran afoul of the Pinking Dindies, again, a cute name for a horrific organization of just awful people. And through it all, Peg just kept brushing herself up and having a baby every year and just kept going at it. And this is part 3 of this 3-part saga. And our guest for this episode as a husband for parts 1 and 2 of the Peg Plunkett saga is Karen Moynihan. So Karen is a friend of the podcast. She's also a podcast co-host herself. She co-hosts with Anna Carey, Double Love, the Sweet Valley High podcast, my most favorite of podcasts. I'm so delighted to get to chat with her on this episode. She's the one who brought Peg Plunkett to my attention in the first place. So Karen, thank you for that. And also, she's a graphic designer, and she is the genius mind behind numerous of the designs in the Vulgar History merch store, including merchandise that I've been teasing these last 2 weeks that I'm finally ready to announce is available in the Vulgar History merchandise store, which is a Peg Plunkett design by Karen Moynihan. So the image, the layout looks like sort of an advertisement, or like you might see in a coaster for an Irish pub sort of vibe. It says Peg Plunkett's. And then there's lots of words on it, all of them historically accurate and or hilarious. So it gives the address on Drogheda Street in Dublin, established 1778. Then there's sort of a profile picture, Peg's face, her beautiful face and profile. Some of the rules of the establishment are listed on this design as well. Manners encouraged. First served, first come. That's Peg's motto. It also says, all pleasures and peculiarities welcomed, strictly no pinking dindies permitted. And there's one more joke on this design that I'm not going to tell you because it'll ruin the jump scare that's going to happen in this episode. Anyway, you can get this beautiful design on various things. You can get this on a t-shirt. I think it looks nice. It's like a white design, so it looks nice on a green background or on a black background. You can choose your color. You can also get this on magnets, on stickers. When I was going through the site to just sort of choose what do I want to put this design on, there were lots of options that I did not choose. But I was just kind of like, this is pretty iconic for Peg. It's a duvet cover, a bath mat. And I was just like imagining her establishment having Peg merch in it. And she would have merchandised the hell out of it if these sorts of companies had been around then. You could also get this though on coasters, which is a real Peg vibe, travel mug, various things. Anyway, the way that you can get this merchandise is, if you're in the United States, I recommend going to vulgarhistory.com/store. And that takes you to our TeePublic site, which is a great service for people who live in the United States in terms of shipping fees. If you live anywhere other than the United States, I recommend going to vulgarhistory.redbubble.com. All the same stuff is available on both sites. It's just the Redbubble site is better for people outside the US, and TeePublic works great for people within the US. And I know there's people listening from all over the place. And I think we all want this Peg Plunkett merch. So anyway, the links are in the show notes as well, so you can pick up your Peg merch. And I think that's enough of a preamble, frankly. This is the third part. If someone's listening to this without listening to parts 1 and 2, I support your choices. I think you might understand it better if you listen to parts 1 and 2. But if you just want a raw dog episode 3, I think Peg would be in favor of that, as evidenced by her continual pregnancies she kept experiencing. Anyway, here's me and Karen wrapping up this incredible saga of a true tits out pioneer, Peg Plunkett. Her life, like it's reading it like if it was a novel or a book or a movie, you'd be like, oh, here's what I want her to do. But it's like, no, she needs to continue living in this city. And so
this is the thing. Yeah. And yeah, it's a tricky time to be a woman, full stop. So, I mean, she's having to deal with a lot.
Yeah. So her decisions, it's where I want that like final scene of Showgirls moment where she just like kicks the shit out of him.
Yeah, so badly.
But that's not what she's able to do.
It wasn't going to be feasible. Yeah.
Well, and then, moving away from that into another petty woman on woman bitch rivalry, an English actress named Anne Catley comes to Dublin to perform.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, Anne.
And so Peg, just please tell this story.
Okay, so Peg discovers that Anne has apparently spoken scurrilously about Peg to this like gentleman friend of hers. And Peg is like, she fucking what? As soon as she hears about this. So she like runs around trying to find this Anne Catley. She's not at her house. She's like, all right, fine. She's at the theatre. Can't find her there either. So Peg is just like dying for a fight, basically, to just confront this woman. Can't find her anywhere. It's about 2 days later. She's in town in her carriage and she sees Anne coming out the stage door of the theatre that she's in. So Peg calls her over to the carriage and basically tells her, who the fuck do you think you are coming over here and slagging me off? And she calls her a street walking London ballad singer and says she'll have her hissed every time she comes on stage. And an hour later, Peg sees her again and she's like, all right, I'm not done yet. And she kind of just like keeps going, just firing insults at this woman, just like, you little bitch, how dare you? So at this point, Anne runs into a shop and faints, or at least pretended to do so, is how Peg puts it.
Herman, my pills, she said.
Big time Herman, my pills. Anne is there with her son, I think. So she runs into the shop, faints. Peg is like, she's pretending to faint. So it's this whole big to-do. Anne goes running to this friend of hers, Colonel Lascelles, and he's like, oh, this will not stand. So they go to sue Peg for slander for all this abuse that she's thrown at her in the street.
And it goes to a jury trial where the anti-English sentiment and the way that Peg has been influencing her way to spending so much money in the shops and encouraging other people to buy more fabric sides in her favor.
The jury love Peg. Everyone loves Peg. They love her. It's like she says that, yes, some of the gentlemen observed to the rest, it would be a pity not to favour a woman who by spending considerable sums amongst traders of this city was of service to it, preferable to a woman who was only a bird of passage who came here to pick up all she could from the public and then carry it to another country, as it was well known that Kathleen never laid out a single farthing in Dublin that she could avoid. So the jury are like, all right, fuck her. We're obviously siding with Peg.
I love that. And that's why, like, when we were mentioning like the hoop skirts and the fabric, like everyone's just like, Peg, you're popularizing like wearing literal curtains on the
yeah. Let's do it.
Love this. Love you, Peg. Like,
yeah. Everyone loves her.
I love this. Yeah, just the fact that they took her to court and she's just like, I'm Peg Plunkett, so like, fuck you.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. And everyone's like, we love
nice try.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice try, Anne.
And then Buck Lawless, tragically not yet dead and still in the story.
Yeah.
He was in London and Peg was like, well, I'll go hang out with him in London for a while, I guess.
Yeah. She doesn't really want to, but he keeps writing to her. So she's like, all right, fine. Let's give this another shot, I guess. Oh, Peg, please don't.
Like, I have had friends who are in where you just like break up with this person.
Oh, God.
And they do, but then they get back together and then they this is like relatable content.
It really is. This is the thing. She's a relatable queen.
Yeah. I mean, there's like celebrity stories you see like this where you're like, oh my God, finally these two are split up. And it's just like, oh God, no, you took him back. No.
Oh my.
Buck Lawless. So anyway, she moves in with Buck Lawless, but right away finds out that he has another woman who he's like living with or something.
Yeah, he's keeping a girl behind her back. It's kind of how it's put in the book. But yeah, so...
Don't know what that means, but like...
Yeah, there's another woman on the scene. So Peg, at this point, she's like, all right, fuck this. So she gets her own place, but still in London. She's like, I'm going to hang out here for a little bit at least and see what the story is. But she moves to her own lodgings in London.
Okay, I need to take this next part because this ties in. I am, as listeners know, and you probably do too, I'm currently working on writing a book about Caroline of Brunswick.
Yes.
And this is Peg Plunkett meets the Prince of Wales, aka Prinny, the future regent, the husband of Caroline of Brunswick. I was like, ooh, content for my book. But also Peg Plunkett, relatable queen, like trolls him as I would if I was there. So
she's fucking amazing. Oh my God.
So she's great. So he's like, I don't know, 18 or 19 at this point. He's like, he's not yet married Caroline of Brunswick, but he's like, everyone hates him already because he sucks. She goes in a fabric store and he's in the same fabric store and he's like, oh, I want this velvet and this silk and whatever. And then Peg goes up and she's like, I too want that velvet and that silk. And she's just like trolling him, basically.
Because she wants to send it to her shoemaker in Dublin as a gift is kind of the real kicker there. That it's like, it's not even for someone fancy. It's from a shoemaker.
Love it. I love that she sees him and that's her first instinct.
Oh, she's so great. She's so great.
Yeah. And then she was out, I believe, she was riding a horse and he's in a carriage, I think is what happened. Yes. Yeah. At first I was like, are they both in carriages? No, she's riding a horse. She's going to go visit a friend. And his carriage came up behind and they're like, move, it's the prince. And then she yells back at him, I want to feel like she like slows down her horse to like say directly to him in his carriage.
Oh, yeah.
And she says, quote, "There is room sufficient. There is one half the road for him, and I have as much right to the other half as he or anyone else." The prince scowled at her and looked as sour as if he would have bitten her nose off, is how Peg described it. And then she kept trolling him. She kept galloping to keep up with the carriage, riding next to him the whole way.
It's so fucking good. It's so good. And all he can do is glare at her, and she's just like, yeah, I'm still here, bitch.
Like, I love her. I love her. Like,
I love her so
as though
much.
I couldn't love her more. I'm just like, oh, like this is one of my historical nemeses, is Prinny the Prince of Wales. And I'm just like, yes, Peg. Fuck up his day. Ugh.
She's like, honestly, an Irish woman giving shit to a monarch. I'm like, who is not here for that? Come on.
Yeah.
Because her friends ask her afterwards why she didn't move aside. And she said to them, yeah, part of the road was for my use as well as for that of the king. And if you English are servile and timid, we Irish are not. So get their asses, Peg.
An Irish icon, just a petty icon. We love it.
So petty. And I love the pettiness. It's so good.
It's so good. It's so nonstop. Like, life circumstances, another person might not still have this spirit about them, but Peg is.
This is the thing.
She's
just great.
She's resilient. Like, she's not going to not be herself. Anyway, she falls ill with pleurisy, which oldie-timey disease, as far as I know.
Yeah.
But she fell ill but stayed out dancing because that's just her vibe.
Yeah, I think in her memoir she actually says, I tried to dance it off. And it's like, Peg, no. That is not the answer. It's like, I'll go to a ball. It'll be fine.
Which, again, feels like something Jessica Wakefield would do.
Honestly, very Jessica. She's very Jessica coded, I have to say. Like, she's so funny.
Yeah. So anyway, dancing does not cure it. So she takes to bed for a month afterwards, during which time her household staff stole all her stuff.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So she's just like, fuck London, and went back to Ireland. And everyone's happy to see her. She's back.
Of course they are. They're delighted. They're so happy to see her. She stays with, Sally, I think, is living with this lady, Moll Hall. They're probably running a brothel together in the meantime. So she just hangs out with them until she kind of gets back on her feet, because she has some stuff still with her. She had bought enough presents, I think, at this point, and they weren't stolen in the big fucking theft by the staff before she left. So she has enough stuff when she comes back that people don't think she's broke. So she's got all these fancy presents for her friends. So they're all just like, oh, cool, Peg's back and she's got loads of presents for us. This is fucking great. She's amazing.
Well, and that's kind of the thing with Peg, just to foreshadow her later era. It's always very important to her to have fancy, beautiful stuff. And just as a business decision, like, she wants to be like, my establishment is the fanciest. I am an elegant, like, she wants to appeal to very rich people. So she always has the best of everything. Yeah, exactly. So she needs to always look wealthy, even if at this point she's not actually wealthy.
Yeah, that's really important, I guess, in that, and in her trade as well. I mean, you need to look fancy. Yeah.
Yeah. And you want people to walk in and see like, oh, it's like nice, clean, I don't know, sheets and like sparkling silverware. Like, everything has to look nice because that makes people want to come there.
Of course. Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay. Then the thing happens with the Italian impresarios.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, God, these guys. Yeah. So it's this Italian violinist, Signor Carnevali, comes to Smock Alley, which is this like really famous theatre in Dublin at the time. And he decides that these nights of the opera he's going to run are going to bar certain kinds of people from attending. And as Peg puts it, every lady of my description. So obviously she's not having that. So she just buys her ticket and goes to the theatre anyway, and then is thrown out by the doormen. She loses an earring in the whole fracas because she puts up a fight. She's not going quietly, like, ever. And she's furious at this. So she gets a warrant against them for assault and robbery because they detained the ticket that she'd paid for and didn't let her.
Oh, I thought the robbery was the earring.
That's the thing. Oh, no, I think it's the ticket.
Okay.
She's like, I've got other earrings. So yeah, she returns. She gets the meanest bailiffs that she can find, comes back with them, who then haul Carnevali and his doormen off to Newgate prison. Because she's just like, fuck you. You can't tell me I can't go to the theatre. Like, I go to the theatre and those are my seats, and you can't just take my money and not let me in. Not happening.
But this is also like her connections. Like, she brings in she knows the bailiffs, she knows the barristers. Like, she goes to them and they're like, oh yeah, Peg, for you, anything. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's sort her out. Yeah.
Then she goes back to try to get in the theatre again. But they're like, all is forgiven. Please come in.
Oh yeah, yeah. They give her the freedom of the house, I think is how they put it. So she can just go for free now to the opera. And she's like, okay. She kind of like, don't actually want to go that much. So she goes a few times just to make the point so that people can see her there and know that like she's won over his stupid rules and that they obviously didn't apply to her because she's Peg Plunkett. What are they going to do? Not let her in? Like, not going to happen.
I'm 100% on her side at this point. But also she is the one who started the feud with Kitty that led to people yelling abuse in the theater seats. So
Yeah. That is true.
So one might understand someone wanting to apply some rules to theater decorum.
I guess. I also feel like the theater at the time was also just super fucking rowdy, and it's like nobody was sitting there quietly behaving themselves. You know, it was fine. It was a bit of a free for all.
Yeah. So, and then, at least my cat is here, just so you know.
So that's not your tail, okay?
No, it's not my tail. There, slapping the microphone. So she decides to host a masquerade.
Oh hell yeah! Like specifically because the government have banned them. She's like, all right, time to do one. So
yeah. So it was like the new trendy thing. Like I didn't know this masquerades as a thing had just started earlier that century. Anyway, so yeah, Dublin had banned masquerades due to leading to some public disturbances in the recent past, which is a real vague way to say.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Clearly some shit went down.
So Julie Peakman says, Peg was unconcerned about the law as its representatives would be at the party.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, she organizes to have it in her own house, prints up 200 tickets for all her pals. The whole thing is the talk of the town. And then as she puts it, those who had tickets applauded my spirit. Those who could not procure any condemned me for my impudence. So basically, if you were going, you were happy about it. And if you weren't, you were just jealous and bitter.
But also like the concept of a masquerade party and the costumes just is, again, very Sweet Valley High coded because they love a costume party.
They really do. Honestly, yeah. It's the Lila Fowler party.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
And she threw more than one masquerade. I just wanted to mention her costumes at some of them. Cleopatra, Messalina, which I love. I haven't done a Messalina episode, but she was a trashy, slutty bitch from Roman history, and that's a great choice. Peg.
Love it.
And then also, ironically, she came dressed as Diana, aka the Chastity.
The goddess of chastity. And there is a line from her about it, how she's kind of saying, well, you know, it is a masquerade. Like, so I have to come as some assumed character. So obviously I'm coming as the goddess of chastity because she's such a funny bitch. Like, I love her.
I love it. I know. And her costumes were always that sort of like a queen or a goddess. And some of the other people, it's like, and she came dressed as an orange seller and she came dressed as a nun. Like her costumes were on a different level from the other people. They didn't really understand the brief of the costume.
Yeah, she got it.
Don't dress as an orange seller. I don't know. I have
the glamour. Come on.
Yeah, I have this orange. I guess I could just like pretend to be an orange seller.
Sure.
Okay, so she's just like, earlier the biographer had been like, this was the happiest time of her life. I'm like, no, this is the happiest time of her life.
She is having a great time here. She like her house is hopping. Everyone's mad about her. She's just having parties, having a great time, just riding whoever she wants. Like she's living it up.
She is. And so she fell in love with a handsome soldier. Take a drink every time she falls for a handsome soldier. Named Robert Gorman. And so I like this story because his father, perhaps understandably, was like, I forbid you,
I guess, fair,
from seeing Peg, and kept a watch over him, but Peg had bribed the household staff.
Oh, she's just so good at winning over household staff. That's the thing. But not her own, apparently, because they keep robbing her, but everyone else.
Yeah, which is interesting. That's a great point.
Yeah.
But I love this. So the father was like, the staff is going to watch him. And he's like, how does he keep getting out? I don't understand.
Yeah, I think Robert is literally like climbing on someone's shoulders to get out an upper window to sneak out and see her. And he eventually catches him and he's like, okay, I'm going to have to send you off somewhere.
Yeah, he says, I'm going to send you off to India to be a soldier in India.
Yes.
Because again, this is a time period where like the English colonial project is going all over the world.
Yeah.
But then this is great. So he's like, okay, I have to go to India, Peg. But, first I have to go to London because that's where I'll be deployed from. But then his departure was delayed and Peg was like, I'll come fuck you in London.
Hooray!
For 6 months.
Yep.
Which
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the father is just like, oh,
damn it, Peg. How does she keep doing this?
she's like, what's the thing? It's like Weebles wobble, but they don't fall over. Like, she's just like,
that is her, yeah.
yeah, she's just like always finds a way. So after he goes off to India, I guess, and he did write her like letters. Oh, he had like a miniature of her that he took with him and stuff.
Oh, that's cute.
Which is like good for you, but like, she's going to be fucking, and she actively is fucking like 25 people today.
As soon as you were like literally out of her eye line, it's over. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So she goes back to Dublin, and this is where, so we're still in the American Revolution era, but soldiers were hanging out in Dublin waiting to be deployed to fight in America, and she's just like, man, the hot hunks everywhere, I'll choose one. And she chose Handsome Jack, or a man. I don't know what's his real name in the book. It's Jack St. Leger.
Yeah, Jack St. Ledger is mentioned very briefly. She just says that he was her particular acquaintance and charming indeed, far exceeding all I ever knew. So he does sound like a very charming dude.
Yeah, so the Julie Peakman looked up to be like, who is this guy? And I was like, ooh, who's this guy? So he's AKA Handsome Jack. That is, yeah, right? So he was an army officer / courtier and a close friend of Prinny, the Prince of Wales.
Okay.
And Prinny said Handsome Jack was one of ye best fellows that ever lived. So, which coming from him must mean like this guy fucks.
I was going to say, yeah, what's his take on people like though? Okay.
So, Jack St. Ledger. So already an accomplished rake.
Yeah. I love that that's a job title, basically, in Georgian era England and Ireland. It's like, oh, he's a rake. Oh, okay, cool. I know everything about him now.
Exactly. So he had, some years earlier, hung out the court of Louis XVI in France. So he's just like fucking his way around. He probably met Marie Antoinette.
Probably at that rate, yeah.
He was just kind of, I don't know, he's Handsome Jack. He's just like a hot guy, and anyway. So let's see. So, and actually, so Prinny's father, George III, who is the king at this time in England, aka Farmer George from Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Anyway, the madness of King George. Anyway, his dad was like, Prinny, he was like, stop hanging with Handsome Jack. He's a bad influence on you. So anyway, that's who Peg is fucking now.
Yeah.
This like legendary fuckboy. This is kind of like her equal in terms of fucking around.
It's, yeah, the fuckboy and the fuck girl. Good for them.
That would be a lovely Regency romance novel.
United at last.
They're at the top level, yeah. So what is Handsome Jack doing in Ireland? Well, he had spent all his money, and I think he was just kind of set there to stay out of trouble for a while. So while in Dublin, he teamed up with Buck Whaley, who you mentioned before, yes, to revive the Dublin Hellfire Club, notorious for their debauchery, which is another, I guess, the way you describe the Pinking Dandies. Like, I assume it's another like gentleman's club / gang.
Exactly. So yeah, and the Dublin Hellfire Club they were like a 1730s, kind of 1740s kind of crew. And so Buck Whaley's dad was Robert Chapel Whaley, and he had a nickname of Burn Chapel Whaley because he hated Catholics so much and would literally just set fire to churches. So he set up the Hellfire Club with another gang of assholes. And they had this clubhouse out in the Dublin mountains that's still there. It's a ruin now, but it is the Dublin Hellfire Club out in the mountains. It's very cool. But they had a painting made of them and everything that's in the National Gallery, like that you can look up and just see all these guys in their big giant wigs. And it's like the Dublin Hellfire Club, there they are. And there was a Limerick Hellfire Club too. There was a bunch of Hellfire Clubs all around the place and in England too. But yeah, Buck Whaley. So he tried to revive it, but their group was called the Holy Fathers instead of the Hellfire Club. So he did kind of try and get it going again under this other name. But again, it was just a club of rich guys drinking and causing trouble. Yeah.
I just have one fact to share about Handsome Jack, which is that there was a whole thing about like, oh, is he having an affair with this woman? And later it turns out like, yes, he was. But the reason why the like scandals, because she was married, the scandals rumors started because he, I don't know. Okay, I don't know about like meal etiquette in like 1780s Dublin, but I guess you would swish water in your mouth to clean your teeth after eating.
Okay.
And he erotically drank this woman's used tooth cleaning water. And everyone's like, oh,
Oh, God.
Herman, my pills. Are they having an affair?
Oh my God. Whoa, what else are they sharing?
He's not concerned about her fluids.
Nope. Oh my God. Like, how do you do that in a sexy way? It's just, ooh.
I think you only can if you have the looks of handsome Jack.
You see, being a handsome man will get you far. That's the thing.
Yeah. And so he was like, no, we're not having an affair. But in fact, later on, they did. And she was some very scandalous woman too. But I had to include that detail because I didn't know. He's like, do you still do this in Ireland? I don't know.
Funnily enough,
No.
no.
Okay. That's not how you declare.
Just do regular toothbrushing and keep that water to yourselves.
So this is her lover at this point. I feel like I really think they're at a similar level of just like
definitely
audacity. Yeah. Anyway, so at this point, Peg is in her early 40s at the height of her profession, the reigning Vice Queen of Dublin.
That's her, yeah.
So her establishment was known as the best in town. I think it always had been by now. Everyone knew. And everyone went there. Lord lieutenants, judges, politicians. She kept things new. Like she kept, revamping, getting new wall hangings and new.
I think she'd moved to a new house at this point. This is Pitt Street. Yeah. So Pitt Street there's actually a hotel on that site now. So it's the Westbury Hotel in Dublin. It's kind of pretty much in or about where this house would have been when she set it up.
Is where I will stay when I come to Dublin.
You should, yes.
The ghost of Peg.
She's just knocking around there somewhere, probably still pregnant, probably. But she spent loads of money on this house, and she made it. It was kitted out in like superb and luxuriant style with like lascivious prints and paintings. Her footmen all had like embroidered livery. There was a fresh importation of gorgeous new girls over from like Covent Garden and Drury Lane that she had handpicked herself. So she's set up. This house is gorgeous. The girls are gorgeous. Everything's lovely. So she is ready to go in this new place.
I do like to mention about the erotic artwork because later we learn that she is a fan herself of reading pornographic books as well. Everything about her is just horny.
She's so horny all the time.
She's like Samantha from Sex and the City is her vibe, actually.
Basically, yeah.
But has been since age 15.
Well, look, yeah, I mean, that lady is never not pregnant because she is just constantly fucking, yeah.
Okay, so at this point, Charles Manners, the 4th Duke of Rutland, came to town. So he is, I will say this and you can explain what this is. So he was the new Viceroy of Ireland, tasked with achieving Anglo-Irish union.
Yeah, okay, good.
That's like when, what's his name? Jared Kushner was like, he's going to solve peace in the Middle East. Like, I feel like it's the same thing. It's like, Charles, you fix this. Yeah.
You can sort this out, right? She's like, yeah, sure, I'll just go hang in Dublin for a bit. It'll be fine.
Yeah. And what did Peg write about? What did she write about when he like burst in literally?
Yeah, because she was just having tea with her pals. Like she was, I think Kitty Netterville was there as well. They were all just having their tea, chatting, having a nice time. And he just kind of turns up with this huge like armed guard of guys beside him on horseback, just like bursts into the house. And he's like, I'm here now. And she's like, okay, cool. And he only wants Peg because she's the best. But she's into him too. So they just party and drink and fuck for like 16 hours. And all his guards stay on horseback outside the house while this is happening.
16 hours.
Yep. So it's super obvious that he's there because his entire like armed bodyguard are outside the house all night long. So everyone's starting to gather around the house like, what's going on in Peg's place? Why are there all these like militia dudes on horseback all night long? And like she's been sending out food and drink to all the guys on horseback in the meantime as well. So they're all well fed and aren't going to try and move them along or anything.
I think this is how they're going to solve the Anglo-Irish conflict.
Just fuck your way to unity.
I think if you put Peg in charge, she could do it.
I think so.
And so he said, I don't know how she described this in her book, but he was so impressed by her that he promised that he would put her on the government pension list under an assumed name. He clearly did not, based on her finances. But
yeah, she does say that he did that. Yeah, but as far as she's concerned, yeah, he did that and it happened. And isn't that great? And it's like, oh, Peg. No, he didn't.
That's another like relatable queen thing about her is she's still like, despite everything she's been through and all the situations and how she's so smart in so many ways, she still is so naive about things.
there's this real innocence to her. It's so weird, isn't it? That you kind of feel like she'd be real cynical at this point, but she just isn't. She just still has this kind of optimism and hopefulness
and
to her.
Trusting
that, like,
people.
Yeah, trusting, and always the people that she absolutely shouldn't.
No.
Like, so there is this weird naivety to her, but she's so endearing. I love her so
love
much.
her. I mean,
at these points, I'm just like, Peg, you need to follow up on these things.
finances was not a part of her life, though. You know what? But she grew up, I don't know. Like Christopher was just being like, no one has any money ever. So I think like as a reaction, the fact she's like, and I shall now spend all my money constantly, like as sort of a trauma response, maybe.
No, yeah, probably, yeah. Like she just never had anything saved, like to hold her over for any time ever. She's either having the best time, living the best life, drinking all the champagne, or she's completely broken, has nothing. There's kind of no in between with her. Like it's one or the other, and it's extreme either way.
Yeah, exactly. And now for a quick advertising break.
As a podcast network, our first priority has always been audio and the stories we're able to share with you. But at Realm, we also sell some pretty cool merch, and organizing that was made both possible and easy with Shopify. When you think about successful businesses like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, an often overlooked secret is the business behind the business that makes selling and, for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. That's because nobody does selling better than Shopify. It's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret that's definitely worth talking about is that Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. That's more happy customers and way more sales going. If you're hoping to grow your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm.
Seeking the truth never gets old, even when it hides in the shadows. Immerse yourself in the world of June's Journey, a free-to-play hidden object game set in the roaring 20s. Solve the mystery of the devious gossip spreader and celebrate our 7th anniversary with exclusive events, never-before-seen decorations, thrilling mysteries, and exciting giveaways. The adventure and the gossip awaits. Are you ready for the journey? Download June's Journey today for free on Android or iOS.
People often look at me with confusion when I ask them what their only one in the room story is. They think it has to be like mine, where I went to a 600-person event and discovered that I was the only Black person there. I know. Horrifying, right? Hi, I'm Laura Cathcart-Robbins, and I am the host and creator of the podcast Only One in the Room. Every week, my co-host Scott Slaughter and I invite you to join us for an hour and lose yourself in someone's only one story. This podcast is for anyone who has ever felt alone in a room full of people, which is to say that this podcast is for everyone.
And we're back. Okay, so she and Charles Manners are fucking around, and everyone knows newspapers are full of stories about Peg and Charlie. Do you want to share the story about the hilarious repartee in the theater?
In the theater, this is so good. Yeah, so it's like a few nights after this first night, Peg is at a show in the theater with all her girls. Manners is there in the royal box with the Duchess, his wife. And these guys in the gods all start shouting at her, and they're like, Peg, who lay with you last? And then, as she puts it, I, with the greatest nonchalance, replied, Manners, you blackguards. And like the joke is so good that even the Duchess is laughing her ass off in the box too, because she's very chill and I think she's probably fucking around as well. So everyone thinks this is hilarious. So it's like no one's the butt of the joke here. It's great and everyone's having such a good time.
Everyone's just having such a good time.
Yeah. And it's such good wordplay too. Like honestly, fair play, Peg.
Iconic. So then she's just like everything again, like she's just like thriving, everything's going great. And then October 1784, her business partner and best friend, Sally Hayes, died after a long, probably venereal illness.
Potentially. Poor Sally. Yeah, because she really was a proper friend to her. Like she never fell out with Sally. They were always pals. And like if they were going off on day trips together, it was with Sally. Like she was just a proper, like a good friend to her. Yeah.
So at this point, like, I don't know, narratively in her life, but this is the part in the biography where Julie Peakman was talking about Peg. And this is part of her like optimism and sort of hopefulness and trusting, but she was devoted to rescuing unfortunate young women like she herself had been. So sometimes that meant offering them jobs to work with her. Sometimes she would mediate a return to their families or husbands.
Yeah, she does talk about that a bit in her memoirs because she's kind of I guess the point that she's writing these things at, she's at this stage, a very kind of trying to not explain herself, but she's saying, and I know what I did was terrible. And then she'll go on and tell like the funniest story ever. And you're like, no, Peg, that was amazing. And she's like, but there's also all these good things that I did. And she did have this really good heart, I think, and tried to look out for people. So like, yeah, if girls were turning up on her doorstep looking to board with her, it's like, unless they were already in the trade, she wasn't interested, and she was going to try and get them back with their families. And if they were like, no, my family's horrible, she'd be like, I'll speak to them and I'll sort this out for you. Like, she didn't try and lure people into her way of living at all. And in her book, she does say, I never in my life was an accessory or instrumental to the corruption of any girl, nor ever received in my house anyone who had not already been deluded, is how she puts it. So like, basically, she's not interested in like corrupting the young or anything like that. So I do think she was trying to look out for people and for girls who she probably related to if they were having a tough time at a young age. She was like, don't end up like me. Like, try and let's get you sorted out. Let's get you fixed up somewhere nice. Yeah.
One sees sometimes in stories about like, brothel owners or whatever, there's kind of like the kindly, motherly figure who's kind of looking after everybody. And she really was that.
She actually was, yeah. Because I guess, it's easy to think, oh, they were all these like, mean bawds that were tricking girls up from the country and like trapping them into this way of life. And like, no, there was obviously people like Peg on the scene too, who were trying to look out for people and not trying to lure anyone anywhere. They were, she was doing her best, I think, by people as much as she could.
Oh, I do want to mention that there was also like, in terms of like sex work and brothels and whatever, like there had been a prostitutes union.
Yeah. Love that. Unionized girls.
Yeah. And we know Peg and Sally had attended at least one meeting of that. So like this was a proper business situation. Like it wasn't.
Yeah. No, and she even refers to other women in the trade as like the sisterhood. So it does feel like they were a community, like, and they did try and look out for each other, it seems like, rather than be rivals. And obviously there was a bit of sparring here and there with someone like Kitty. But I think when she actually had her own brothel, and other women did too, they didn't seem like they were in some kind of mad competition with each other. They were kind of trying to help each other, I think.
And I feel that in the sisterhood of podcasters, I think I've never encountered everyone is so supportive and kind, just in terms of podcasts supporting other podcasts. I find that's a similar sort of like, we're all just out here trying to figure out what the hell we're doing.
We're all just doing our best here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like, we're not in competition with each other because it's like,
no,
we're podcasters. It's like, we're not broadcast television. Like there's not, people can listen to as many podcasts as they want.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So a guy named Barry Yelverton, which surprised me because Barry to me feels not like an oldie time name, but
it really doesn't.
Barry.
Yeah, Barry.
Anyway, Barry Yelverton proposed marriage to Peg. He was the second son of the chief baron of the court of the Exchequer. So basically he was going to inherit money and a title probably, and Peg said no.
Yeah.
Several times. But then eventually she's like, this will get me money, so okay.
Yeah, she says that the title, The Honourable Mrs. Yelverton, so tinkled in her ears that she was like, all right, fuck it, let's do this.
So she decided for the first time, although she's been calling herself Mrs. Leeson for this whole time, really.
A long time now, yeah.
Because the father wouldn't consent, so they had a super secret, sexy marriage, wedding ceremony, much like you did. In the Dublin equivalent of like a Las Vegas chapel.
Yeah.
But pretty much right away, she was like, oh no, this is a bad idea. This guy sucks.
Yeah, he kind of cools off on her like immediately, and he was the one chasing her. But it is that classic thing where it's like, well, now he's got her, and he's like, yeah, I don't know if I even like you that much now. It's like, oh, dude, what are you wasting her time for?
Yeah, exactly. So the dad, who was just like, did not support this, he's like, Peg, I'll give you 500 guineas to dissolve the marriage. And she's like, deal.
Yeah, nice one. She's like, yep, this was a bad idea anyway. I'm out of here. Thank you.
Make
Bye.
some money on it. For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I'll mention also Peg often supplied girls for parties at we talked about these various men's secret societies, including the Anecdote Club of Free Brothers. Quite a name.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of those guys. And some of them were genuinely just like a very dry, like dining club or something. And obviously they were fucking too. But like, yeah, not all of them, I guess, were up to absolute devilment and beating people up for no reason. So some of them were just guys who just like to drink and have a bit of sex. So that's fair enough too.
And these guys are cool because they were so popular. The Anecdote Club of Free Brothers made her an honorary member and
Love that.
presented her with a bawdy poem called Guide to Joy, written by
Yeah.
Mrs. H. of Drumcondra, who was
Yeah.
one of the mistresses of Prinny.
He keeps popping up. Yeah, and apparently this poem, Guide to Joy, was it was like an ode to the house on Pitt Street and just how great a house it was to go have sex in, basically, because Peg is amazing.
I just love that they made her an honorary member here. And this is also where Julie Peakman mentioned Peg was known to enjoy reading bawdy poetry as well as pornographic verse. And this is like one doesn't often hear about. I'm sure lots of people of lots of genders have always enjoyed this sort of thing, but it's not often ever written about women enjoying this. Like she had a collection of like pornography and she was just like, you know what, I'm horny and what do I want to read? Sex, erotica. She's never not thinking about sex and that's just her way.
It's true. Sure, like her house is covered in paintings and prints of sexy stuff too. Like she's just, yeah, she's into it.
That's you do you, Peg.
Absolutely.
I love her and I'm so happy you brought her into all of our lives, Karen. By watching
She's
this
so
random
fun.
television show.
Yeah.
Okay, but then she's like, at this point, she's aging into her 50s, which she's still Peg, but she's like, you know, like a ballet dancer, there's a shelf life on being a successful courtesan known for your looks. And so she decided to build a retirement house. She hired builders to build this house in Black Rock.
Yeah, Black Rock, that's fancy. It's a fancy area.
So building a house in Black Rock would be expensive, I'm shaking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know, would you even get to build a house in Black Rock now these days? It's one of these just really lovely seaside towns, but yeah, very expensive to live in.
So she, in this new era of her life, she re-embraced her lapsed Catholic religion. Did she write about this? That she tried to kill herself by drinking opium because she felt so guilty over her life's path.
This is the thing. Yeah. So as she puts it, there's a day where these two gentlemen come to see her, but she had read in the papers that they had like refused to pay a man for some election advertisements they had put out. So she berates them for this, but ends up being so kind of wound up by the exchange that she starts to look at her own life and kind of wonder, well, who am I to, you know, give shit to these men when I've done all these terrible things, and kind of puts herself into such a spin that she does end up in this kind of state of delirium. And she says in a fit of delirium that she took 4 ounces of opium in an effort to end her life. But it doesn't work.
What it does do is it puts her in a stupor for 84 hours. A very specific and odd time. Not 72, but 84. So just over 3 days. And so she wanted to repent, but she didn't know how to do that.
Yeah, she's kind of just flailing around, I think, because she has turned to religion, but she's kind of like, well, what do I actually do? Like, what do I, other than pray, like, is there anything meaningful I can do to I guess, recant all this stuff or repent?
And this is where she's really cool and feels to me very contemporary, because she's like, Catholicism is not doing it for me. She wrote, quote, all religions were alike to me. I would also worship the God of nature in spirit and in truth, no matter whether in a mosque, a meeting house, chapel, church, synagogue, bed, or field. So she was just like spiritual, but not religious. She believed in charitable works rather than prayer.
Yeah, she kind of thought that was most likely the way to kind of make amends for the life she had led, was to try and do some kind of something charitable.
And so she's just like, okay, you know, I'm retiring from this life, but she had no savings. She went to BlackRock, but debts mounted. And this is where she's like, well, I'm going to blackmail my lovers and publish a multi-volume memoir, which is a great idea.
Yeah. Honestly, good for her. Well, this is the thing, because she has all these IOUs and like promissory. Oh, it's such a good idea, because she literally has a stack of IOUs and promissory notes from all these men over the years. And of course, now that she's retired and repented, she's like, hey, can I have my money? And they're like, no, what are you going to do about it? Because she's not in a position anymore to really, as far as they can tell, she's not in a position to really do anything or like tell anyone else in town that actually don't, let this guy into your house because he's not going to fucking pay up and he hasn't paid me for the last 10 years, whatever. So it's like it's so much money. It's like a few £1,000s, I think, at the time that she's owed by all these different people. And as far as she, like, again, this is like the naive optimism of her, that she thought that they were going to pay up after all these years, and she has these notes and half of them weren't even signed. Like, it was a mess. Like, she just was never good with finances or saving or just that bit of thinking ahead in terms of economics. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too bad none of her long-term lovers were like an accountant or something.
Right. Always with the soldiers.
So she publishes the first 2 volumes in 1795. And then, like, again, a relatable queen. She gets the money from them and she's like, great, I'm now going to spend that money.
Yeah, just immediately.
Want to buy a new
it's
dress
gone.
and some earrings. Oh, wait, it's gone? Oh. Ooh.
Uh-oh.
So she, again, pawns most of her belongings. Creditors caught up with her and she was arrested for her debts. She wound up renting out her Blackrock house to a tenant. And at some point, she acquired a spiritual advisor called Mr. O'Falvey.
Yeah, the O'Falveys, I think, were friends of hers from Kerry. But yeah, I think the Mrs. O'Falvey, before she got married to Mr. Falvey, she actually lived in Peg's house with her. She was like this wife who had a terrible husband. So she worked with Peg for a while to try and get some money together. And Peg, like, was a proper good friend to her. And then she ended up in Kerry married to Mr. O'Falvey. So the O'Falveys kind of know Peg with quite some time. So yeah, they continued to be good to her, I believe, yeah, in the kind of years that followed.
Just finding her a cheaper place to rent and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listeners, things get grim. So she started work on her 3rd volume of memoirs. She stayed in most of the time. She became, like, again, relatable, just sort of like a homebody. Like, she had such an extroverted life of parties and being with people. And now she's just finding some joy in quiet and being at home. Anyway, she went out for a walk one day, came home, and found out again one of her servants had stole all her stuff.
God damn it. It's such a disaster every time this happens, like, because they really leave her with nothing, like, every time. It's terrible.
Okay, and then another time she's out walking with her companion at night. They were overtaken by highwaymen who took all the money that they had on them.
Yeah, like, every time she manages to scrape, because, like, some old friends do come through for her here and there where she'll kind of scrape a bit of money together, but then, yeah, something happens every time that just messes it all up for her again.
And then, I mean, trigger warning for sexual assault. She went to visit her friend Mrs. H, who, the writer of the body poem, you might recall, the former mistress of Prinny in Drumcondra. When they were walking home at dusk, ruffians attacked Peg and her companion. Not Mrs. H, but I think her just, like, friend or her servant who was with her.
Margaret Collins was her friend at this point, that she was just living within the house, and they had, walked to Drumcondra to see Mrs. H. So on the way home, they were set upon by these fuckers.
By these fuckers who assaulted them. And then Mrs. H took them back, and then they both started showing signs of a disease that they clearly had caught from the attackers.
Yeah. So, and as Peg kind of even says, it's like in all her professional career, she never had, like, venereal disease ever, or syphilis, nothing. She was always good to go. And now at this point in her life, she has contracted, they reckon, syphilis.
Yeah. So she's put on what people did then, which is a course of mercury treatments.
Yikes.
Which is something like it helps to, it makes you sweat, and then you sweat out I don't know. But that's what was given to people.
I don't know what the logic is of it either.
I don't know.
But it sounds rough, because she says that they were reduced to skeletons in the kind of 3 months or however long it took to run the course of treatments.
I want to say that Mary Queen of Scots' husband, Darnley, when he was getting his mercury treatment for syphilis, he was in, like, a mercury bathtub or something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It did something. It might be like, how chemotherapy can help kill cancer cells, but it also, like, really affects your body in other ways. It might be like,
it's
like mercury gets rid of the syphilis, but also kills you.
Exactly. Yeah, you're cured because you're dead. Yeah. So I don't know how that works.
Which is not to say chemotherapy kills you. I'm just saying that, like, a thing that can get rid of a disease
might seem like it's making things worse. Yeah. Or just there'll be other side effects. But it does seem like they do kind of get over the disease. But I think at this point, her health is just in such a bad way. Yeah.
But then she gets around a course of Dr. James's fever powder, which Julie Peakman theorizes is what actually killed her.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, because she does write that she has a fever and she's taking this powder and she reckons it has broken it. But yeah.
It did break the fever. So again, like, Dr.
Yeah.
James's fever powder, which I want to say was cocaine. I don't know.
Probably. Yeah.
It broke her fever, but I think she was just so broken down from everything. Her health deteriorated in all kinds of different ways. And Peg Plunkett, the world, became a less fun place, a less cool place. She died March 22nd, 1797, aged probably around 55.
Okay. Yeah. See, in my book, it's like she was age 70, but it's like, okay, but was she though?
Right.
Because as you say, were there men throwing themselves at her when she was 60? I mean, maybe. We know she was hot. Was she still hot in her 60s? She could well have been, but.
Yeah. Julie Peakman, at the very beginning of the book, she's like, what year was she born? Let's investigate. And just looking at certain people who she met and certain places she was when certain things were happening. So I think it said when she died, people were like, oh, wow, she looks rough. I approximate her age is 75. Therefore, that is her age.
Oh, that makes sense.
But it could just be she just looked old because of
she did, because and especially when she ended up in that debtor's prison for a while, like it really did a number on her looks, because she actually like ran into a former lover who was also thrown into the debtor's prison, and he didn't recognize her at first when he saw her. It was only kind of when he was up close, he was like, oh my God, Peg, it's you. So she definitely looked, I would say, drastically different in those later years of her life. Yeah.
I think another way that Julie Peakman figured out the birth age was when she started having children, and when she was married, and where it's just like, well, it's possible she had a child when she was 57, but it's more likely she was 37, like that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
So, but you know what? She's ageless. What was her age? I don't know.
Who cares?
So after paying off her debts, there's no money left for a funeral, but the grocer paid for the funeral, along with some of her friends that she still had at this point in her life.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this was the grocer that called in a debt that was the one that landed her into the debtor's prison.
So he's feeling bad.
There, yeah. So, yeah, he should.
Yeah. So her death was reported in the newspapers when she died, because she had been such a famous person for such a long time.
Of course.
So one of the newspapers said, Mrs. Margaret Leeson, alias the famous Peg Plunkett, died in Found Street?
Oh, Found Street.
Died in Found Street, Dublin, yesterday night. This lady was one of the most celebrated courtesans in Europe. And I think it went on to say, and she got a pension from the government, which she clearly did not. But I think she told people she did. And maybe she thought she did.
I think she thought she did, to be honest. Yeah, just even the way she kind of writes about it in the book. She only briefly mentions it, but as far as she's concerned, yeah, she's got this pension.
Just money was always there and she's never thought about it. That's like so many celebrities who it turns out that their accountants have been stealing from them for decades, and they're like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, the business managers, they've been fleeced, and they're like, wait, how did this happen? So it is, I guess it's something that not everyone just has the kind of skill set to stay on top of.
And then she was interred in St. James's churchyard. And so you wouldn't know this because this was in the book I read, which is not around me, or else I would get the specifics about it. But so the author Julie Peakman wanted to go and pay her tributes and like to see the grave. But then she went to the churchyard, and where people from that era were buried, it's like locked away behind a gate. So then she's like, does anyone know who can open this gate? And they're like, oh, Seamus, he's down at the pub. So then she goes down to the pub, and she asks the barman,
Classic
and
Seamus.
She's like, is Seamus here? And the bartender's like, I'm Seamus. And then and then he goes and like unlocks the gate for her, and there's a guy suddenly appears who's like, I've been waiting to get into this graveyard for 25 years. I've been petitioning to open. So then her and this guy both go into the graveyard. And she's like, oh, is this cool? I don't know. And then the guy who's there is like, well, who are you looking for? It's Catholic or Protestant? And she's like, Catholic. And he's like, well, Catholics, I forget what it is. It's like they're on this side, Protestants are this side. But eventually she wasn't able to find the grave ultimately, because I think it's just wear and tear. Like it's overgrowth and things.
I think I read somewhere that it was like an unmarked grave even. So there may not even have been money for a headstone or anything. And I guess, it was so long ago. Yeah. And when, I don't know, I guess with graveyards like that are that old, they get so overgrown and it's unmarked.
Well, right. Like it's just locked all the time. Yeah.
And there's literally nothing to mark where it was. So I guess that's such a shame though, that there isn't somewhere.
I know. That's why I wanted.
I don't know.
And I understand Julie Peakman, after doing this biography, is like, I want to see her grave. Like I want to see where she's commemorated.
Yeah.
And so I really liked it. My first clue that this was going to be part of that book was in her acknowledgments at the beginning. She's like, I want to thank Seamus, who unlocked the gate for me. Because I think she was ready to hop the fence. She's like, I want to get in this either.
I need in. Let me in.
Oh, yeah, but then she also told the other guy who's there, she's like, let's tell each other when we leave so we don't accidentally lock one of us in here.
Oh, good shout. Yeah.
So it's a story worthy of Peg Plunkett, really. So there's a
Excellent.
statue for that balloon guy, but Peg Plunkett,
Ugh.
nothing, as far as I know.
Nothing. Not a goddamn thing. Yeah, she actually calls him Mr. Balloon as well in the
Good for
memoirs,
her.
which is very funny.
There's another guy who she's involved with who she called like the chimney guy, and he invents some sort of like new chimney flume or something.
Oh, but she's so fun. There was also kind of like she had her own version of TripAdvisor, where like if she went somewhere and felt like her friends and her weren't being treated properly, she'd write something on the window of the building with her diamond ring, and she called it her diamond pencil. So she was like, I left a missive with my diamond pencil. So there was a place run by a man called Broadhead. And she wrote on his parlour window, she scratched in, not broadhead, but flathead, you surely should be, as you're really a flat in the highest degree.
That's a lot to carve with a ring. With it.
Isn't it? It's so much. But she did it with her little diamond pencil.
Iconic. Oh,
So
Peg Plunkett. The time has come for us to score her on our 4-point scale, the scandaliciousness scale. I have high hopes for her. I think she's going to score pretty high. In some categories, we'll see.
I feel like
Okay. So the
Okay.
first category is, I think, where she's going to score the top part. So it's all scores from 0 to 10. So scandaliciousness. How scandalous is her story? Or was she seen by people in her time, like the people around her, on a 0 to 10?
I see. Yeah, in terms of, I think she's probably more scandalous now than she was then, because at the time, prostitution was just part of life in Georgian Dublin. Like it wasn't a taboo or anything. It was just, yeah, look at all these courtesans, aren't they great? So if anything, she's probably more scandalous now. But I mean, I also feel like she's got guys jumping in and out of windows. Like she's always up to something. She is ripe for scandal.
Well, and even just thinking about her, like as a young person, like her family disowned her basically because they felt she was scandalous but that was just for living in that house. But I mean, she ran off to try and get married when she was 15. Like that is funny because she was scandalous to some people, but then she and her establishment was so ingrained with the upper echelons of society. Like the fact that court case found for her and not for the English actress, like everyone respected her. So she wasn't, so it's tricky because she was scandalous in some ways, but not in other ways.
But she wasn't like on the fringes for being scandalous. It was like they loved her because she was scandalous, I suppose.
Well, that's the thing. So that doesn't mean she wasn't scandalous. They're just like,
it's going to depend on your definition of scandal and also the time that we're talking about.
she's scandalous, but we don't mind.
Yeah, we like it. That's what we like about her.
I think she gets a very high score here, like on a 0 to 10 for scandaliciousness. Even just the juiciness of her memoirs, like the stories she shares, bribing all the servants, like sneaking out around with all these guys.
It's surely a high score. I mean, is it a 9? Is it a 10? I'm not sure what kind of scores people like her tend to rack up on the show, but I mean,
I'm going to give her a 9, I think, just because of what you said, like, because she wasn't, her family disowned her, but all of Dublin loved her. She wasn't like run out of town for being scandalous. So I'm taking 1 point off for the fact that everyone was kind of cool with it.
That seems fair. Yeah, I think, yeah, she loses a point just because, well, everyone loved her, which isn't really scandalous in itself. But she was, that's the thing. Yeah, I think 9 is fair.
Definitely high up. The next category is scheminess, coming up like a person with a plan, always landing on her feet. Like the resiliency, I think, would land in here. Like her scheme's not always good.
True.
But she always had one. Well, and just the scheminess of like the Jackson and Lawless era. Like
just the thought of these guys just jumping in and out of a parlour window to come bang her, like, well, Leeson's out in Kildare is so funny. It's so good.
She really came up with some good strategies during that era.
She did. Like, if it came to getting some dick, she had a plan.
Yeah, and it was...
If it came to looking after herself and maybe saving some money, she never had a plan.
No.
So in certain areas, she was superb at scheming, and in others, very much not so.
So again, it's a tricky thing, but I think she was definitely more schemy than not.
Yeah.
That might be another 9, maybe.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, she just always like the pivots. She's like, okay, I'm tired of this guy, so I'm going to switch to this guy. Like, I'll try living in London. Nope, tired of that. I'll move back here. Yeah. I'll open a brothel. Like, She's always coming up with a scheme.
She does always have something up her
She does.
sleeve.
She does. The next category is significance.
Ooh.
And that can be to history and I mean, she wasn't like a politician who passed a great law or whatever, but I think she was very
No,
significant
this is the thing.
at the time. Like the fact not everybody's death is mentioned in the newspaper.
Well, that's true. Yeah. And I think, she's someone who at the time was obviously very, very famous. But now people don't know who she is. Like she's just not someone you hear about, really.
And that's tricky. And there are a number of people like that I've covered on the podcast where they were so incredibly famous and influential at the time. And then as soon as they died, it's like they never existed. But they were significant, but they're not now. But I don't know.
First woman in Dublin to wear a bell hoop. That is significant. In terms of fashion history, she's up there.
That's true. That's true. The effect she had on the economy of Dublin, like she kept those businesses going.
Yeah. She was keeping these textile boys in business for sure.
The significance of making fun of Prinny to his face. That's very significant to me.
I love that. I just love that so much about her.
It's tricky. I'm gonna propose a 5 because she was so significant at the time. She's such a crucial part of the ecosystem, but then she was forgotten so much. That's why I'm balancing a 0 with a 10, and that's where I land on 5.
Do we just go 5? Yeah, I think split the difference.
Yeah. And then the final category is what I call the sexism bonus, which is how much more could she have accomplished were it not for sexism? This is a category that people get high scores in if it's like, she could have, I don't know, it's like a person, she wanted to go to medical school, but she couldn't. And so she had to stay home and watch children.
Yeah.
So I think, if she didn't have to have these men as her champions, like if she had been able to get a job and have her own money, her life would have been very different. But I would say the sexism didn't really get in her way, though.
No, if anything, I kind of feel like, well, if she wasn't pregnant all the time, what else could she achieve? But it would just be having more sex with more guys, really, to be honest. Like she was just there for a good time. She was a party girl,
Yeah, I don't think sexism really, like, other than like culturally, the fact that like women couldn't do as much stuff, like that didn't really get in her way.
No, it doesn't seem like it stood in front of anything that she was particularly interested in and felt like she was barred from.
Yeah. I think maybe, I don't know. And there have been other people similar to her, like Lola Montez comes to mind. She got a very low sexism score because she was just like, okay, this is what the world is like. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. I'll figure it out. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
So it might be something like, I don't know, like a 2 or a 3 or something.
I was thinking 3. Yeah.
So let me see. I will officially add this up on a calculator. I have long stopped trying to do this in my head because that's like Peg Plunkett. Mathematics.
Oh, absolutely not. I just panic when someone says numbers to me.
So her total score is a 26 out of 40, which I think lands her around the neighborhood. Like Lola Montez got a 23, for instance.
Okay.
So she's in that neighborhood. There's other people. I'm trying to see who. I don't know. I did an episode about someone called Rochelle, who this really reminded me. Her name is just Rochelle, one name only.
Amazing. Oh, like Madonna or Cher. I love it.
Rochelle, whose story is actually quite similar to this. She was a actress in France, and she fucked everybody. When she
see, that's the thing. I think it's the girls who were primarily interested in just having sex. It's like that's all they want. They're having a good time,
and they found a way to do it.
This is the neighborhood she's in.
It was one of the things that Rochelle did. She was very pregnant at one point by one of her many lovers, and she was on a train trip. She was like touring England, I think, and she met 2 men on the train who were cousins, and then they both became her lovers too. Like it's a really similar vibe. Yeah.
Very similar.
I'm putting their names next to each other on my document because that's perfect. Rochelle and Peg Plunkett, I think, would have been...
That's the girl gang.
Great. They would have been great friends. They would have been probably fighting over lovers, but ultimately...
Oh, probably.
Ultimately having a nice
time
together.
Definitely.
Karen, can you please tell everybody where they can... about your podcast you do and other activities you do and where they can follow you on social media and things like that?
Sure. Yeah. So I co-host Double Love, which is the Sweet Valley High podcast. I co-host it with Anna Carey, and we just chat about a Sweet Valley High book episode by episode. So each episode covers a particular book, or actually at this stage we're kind of doing half a book per episode because we just end up getting so involved, and the books get a bit more convoluted as the series goes on too. So everything's a two-parter at the minute. So it kind of gives us more time as well to really dig into all the madness that goes on in that series.
And you're into the hundreds. Like, I don't know.
We're into the hundreds. Yeah. We're at book 100. I think we just finished book 114. So it's a massive back catalogue at the minute. But yeah, so we just chat about Sweet Valley High. We have great fun doing it. We're all over social media pretty much at this stage. It's at SVH Podcast on any of the social media sites. If you just search Double Love either on any podcast app, you'd find us there too. But yeah, it's great fun. Like it's such a mad series. Like it is, I suppose for people who don't know, it's about these twins in California, a fictional town in California called Sweet Valley, identical twins, Jessica and Elizabeth Wakefield. They're the most gorgeous girls in the world, a bit like Peg. Everyone loves them all the time. Wherever they go, boys are falling over themselves to get to know them. Whereas one is very studious and serious. The other, then Jessica, is the wild party girl who is also kind of a monster in certain books too. But their adventures just get more and more ridiculous as the series goes on. And we just have great fun with it. There's been a werewolf series. There's been evil twins turning up to try and murder them. There's car crashes. There's amnesia. There's all your kind of classic soap opera bits and pieces kind of find their way in there eventually. But yeah, it's great fun.
And we are going to take this to the after show if people want to hear more about Sweet Valley High and that sort of thing. But I will say that you don't have to have read the books to enjoy your podcast because it's just the two of you saying what happens. And sometimes I'm left in such suspense. I'm like, what is going to happen next? And I have to like look up a book summary to be like, I need to know.
I need answers.
I'm not going to read the book, but I need to know.
Yeah, just tell me.
And then your graphic design business.
Yeah, I'm a freelance graphic designer. KarenMoynihan.com is my probably quite out of date website at this stage, but that's where it is, where you can find me and contact me if you need to. I just do freelance design. That's my main job. My real life job is graphic design. Yeah, which I do enjoy.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you've done such a brilliant job with various vulgar history commissions. My increasingly unhinged things I request of you.
I love those jobs though. They're so great because you always have such a clear idea of what you want. You're like, okay, I kind of want this sort of a reference, like with this title or this particular set of words. And I'm like, okay, I know what you're going for here. This is great. Like you always have some kind of idea of what you want, which is perfect because at least I know what trying to reference I'm trying to hit here. Yeah. But they're always really fun jobs. I really love doing them.
Oh, good. Well, and that's where I appreciate you as the graphic designer, because the people who I work with for the Vulgar History merch, they're all people who I can be like, do you know, like, you know my references. Another graphic designer may be like, what are you talking about? But yeah. Okay, well, Karen, thank you so much. I knew this would be a lengthy episode. We had to get all the hits.
This is the thing, and I'm used to long episodes with Double Love.
That's what I thought when I invited you. I'm like,
they get quite long, yeah.
You're used to it. But yeah, I mean, we couldn't leave out any of the anecdotes.
This is the thing. She's so funny, and so much good, fun stuff happens in her story that you can't leave anything out. And I feel like we probably did miss a few things, but like, she's just the best. I love her so much.
She's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And then listeners, if you want to hear more of me and Karen, then hop over to Patreon, where we're going to have an after show discussion that we're going to record next. Anyway, thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you, Britt, for having me. This was great fun.
So I had said in the introduction to this episode that there was one more joke on the Karen's design of the Peg Plunkett t-shirt that I didn't want to say because I didn't want to spoil. But what it is it's a shout out to the way that Peg Plunkett antagonized Prinny, George, the Prince of Wales, aka the husband of Caroline of Brunswick. So one more line on this beautiful Peg Plunkett design. It does say official irritant of HRH George, Prince of Wales. So that's on there too as well. And again, you can pick up the Peg Plunkett design as well as any of our other wonderful Vulgar History merch. Several of the designs were also designed by Karen Moynihan. You can get those if you're in the US. Go to vulgarhistory.com/store. And if you're in anywhere other than the US, go to vulgarhistory.redbubble.com and show your love for this iconic Irish woman. You know, as long as there's not a statue of her, at least we can have people walking around wearing her profile and name on t-shirts or pins or magnets or mugs or whatever you want to get, frankly. And we scored Peg on the Scandaliciousness scale. And I need to check in with you because we also have Nothing But Net, which is this special scale we're doing for season 7 to see how all these people, in the most unlikely of ways, connect back to Marie Antoinette, who is the patron saint of this season. How do you solve a problem like Marie Antoinette? So Peg, at first I thought it was going to be through Prinny, because Prinny, George the Prince of Wales, his mother is Queen Charlotte from Queen Charlotte, A Bridgerton Story, and Queen Charlotte from Queen Charlotte, A Bridgerton Story was pen pals with Marie Antoinette. So I thought, okay, well, you know, Peg saw him and that was his mom, and then the mom knew Marie Antoinette. But there's an even closer connection because Peg's lover, Handsome Jack, hung out at the court of Marie Antoinette. So he knew Marie Antoinette directly. So from Peg to Handsome Jack, from Handsome Jack to Marie Antoinette is 2 degrees of separation between these 2 iconic 18th century women. And I have just a few things that I like to say as we wrap up these episodes. I don't know if you used to watch it. It depends on your age, but if you used to watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which is a show that was on right up through into the 80s. It was on when I was a young child. And part of what he did every episode is he would come in and from outside and he would change out of one sweater into his inside cardigan, change his shoes for his slippers. And at the end, I think he did the reverse. I think he switched back in his outside cardigan and into his shoes. And it was just sort of soothing that you knew that the same things were going to happen every episode. And I think that's what this podcast has developed, where it's like at the end of each episode, I give you a bunch of information. And it's information that it's good for everyone to know. So first of all, we have a Patreon for this podcast, the Vulgar History Podcast / myself, Anne Foster as a person. So if you want to get early ad-free access to all the episodes of this podcast, then you can support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. So you go to patreon.com / Anne Foster Writer, and then you just say how much you want to pledge. And so anyone who pledges $1 or more per month, you get the early ad-free access to all episodes of this podcast. And that's going back. It's retroactive. So you can use the feed there to listen to the older episodes without the advertising break. And if you want to pledge $5 or more a month on there, you get access, the early ad-free access, as well as bonus episodes. So things like the after show that I recorded with Karen Moynihan, where we talk about Irish history and we talk about Sweet Valley High. And just as long as this 3-part saga was, there was more stuff that I wanted to talk to her about. And that's all in the after show. I also have recorded the after show with a few other people, including Alison Epstein. There's an after show with her. And then we also have, for the $5 or more Patreons, you have access to our Discord server, which is a happening place that I love it. I check it 12 times a day just to see what people are talking about there. People are sharing about costume dramas that they've seen, or if they go on trips and they see things that were mentioned in the podcast. It's just a great way for you, the Titso Brigade, to get to chat with each other. And also I'm there and Lana's there. Lano Johnson, friend of the podcast, frequent co-host. Anyway, so it's just like a group chat. And so that's available to people who join the Patreon for $5 or more a month. And those people also get access to Vulgar Peace Theater, which is where I talk about costume dramas with Alison Epstein and Lanoa Johnson. And we're on a summer hiatus / I'm writing a book hiatus right now from Vulgar Peace Theater, but there will be new episodes again in the fall. And this is a great time to join the Patreon and just catch up. Or if you want to join the Patreon, you can get a free 7-day trial at that $5 level, but it's free. So you can just like binge everything you want and then just like peace out. I respect it. If you just want to kind of like have a little taste, that's fine too. You can also join the Patreon for free, where you can see some stuff that I post there, just pictures of people from the episodes or just like news and updates and things that I see. So there's something for everyone on the Patreon, whether you want to pay for it or not. It's just sort of that's kind of the Vulgar History community is sort of, I'm trying to gently, like a sheepdog, nudge more people over in that direction, because I have been doing so much engagement on Instagram, but Instagram has not been sharing my content as widely as it used to. And so I like to have content where the people who want to see it actually see it. That being said, I am on Instagram at Vulgar History Pod, and my DMs are open. You can always, if you have feedback or comments, or you want to send me pictures of your trips you've been to places that people went to on the podcast, or do you have a suggestion of a Peg Plunkett type person from the country that you're from, let me know that as well. You can send me DMs on Instagram. And also, I put updates there too. It's just sometimes people don't see them. Anyway, you can also contact me via the website, which is vulgarhistory.com. There's like a contact button there. And so that opens a form where you can send me feedback that way as well. But wait, there's more, because we have a brand partner, which is Common Era Jewelry. So Common Era Jewelry is a 100% woman-owned business that makes beautiful, it's a small business. I think there's 2 people working in it. And what they do is they make beautiful jewelry, really quality jewelry that is inspired by women from history as well as female figures from classical mythology. So there's like Hecate. Is that like the goddess of witches or something like that? I saw that one of our Vulgar History listeners had recently got the Hecate ring from Common Era Jewelry. I just know how to pronounce Hecate from I, Claudius. I don't know if that's how it's said. It may be Hecate. Anyway, but there's also other figures like Clytemnestra is there. If you love I, Claudius like I do, Livia is there. Agrippina is there. Like these are just the designs inspired by them. Are available through Common Era Jewelry. Whatever you buy from there, Vulgar History listeners always get 15% off all items from Common Era by going to commonera.com/vulgar or using code vulgar at checkout. In that Mr. Rogers way, I'm saying things out of order and it's throwing me. I hope it's not throwing you. I just want to make sure I don't forget to say anything. Yeah, the last thing I'm going to say is that also the Vulgar History ecosystem ever expanding. And we have a Substack now, which is like a newsletter. So when you sign up for it, you just get every week a newsletter from me, which at the moment I'm sharing these essays about women from history. It doesn't always match one for one with who the podcast is about that week. These are some essays about other people. Currently, I'm doing a series called Tudor. I Hardly Knew Her, where I'm talking about women of Tudor history. And so you can join that by going to vulgarhistory.substack.com, and that's free. So yeah, next week, the season 7 continues. I'm not going anywhere, except I am, but I'll tell you about that in a few weeks. This podcast is not going anywhere. And next week, we're going to be talking about some American history again, specifically the American saga of an Indigenous woman who was around during the time of the American Revolution and what her experience of that was like. So stay tuned for that next week. And until then, my friends, keep your pants on and your tits out. Vulgar History is researched, written, and hosted by Anne Foster. That's me. The editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. The Vulgar History show image is by Deborah Wong. Transcripts are written by Aveline Malik. Find transcripts of recent episodes at vulgarhistory.com.
Welcome to the small town of Chinook, where faith runs deep and secrets run deeper. In this new thriller, religion and crime collide when a gruesome murder rocks the isolated Montana community. Everyone is quick to point their fingers at a drug-addicted teenager, but local deputy Ruth Vogel isn't convinced. She suspects connections to a powerful religious group. Enter federal agent V.B. Laureau, who has been investigating a local church for possible criminal activity. The pair form an unlikely partnership to catch the killer, unearthing secrets that leave Ruth torn between her duty to the law, her religious convictions, and her very own family. But something more sinister than murder is afoot, and someone is watching Ruth. Chinook, starring Kelly Marie Tran and Sanaa Lathan. Listen to Chinook wherever you get your podcasts.
Contained herein are the heresies of Radolf Buntwine, erstwhile monk turned traveling medical investigator. Join me as I study the secrets of the divine plagues and uncover the blasphemous truth that ours is not a loving God, and we are not its favored children. The heresies of Radolf Buntwine, wherever podcasts are available.